Greetings and welcome to Best Atari 2600 Reviews 2 by Classic Game Room, the second collection of my Atari 2600 reviews produced over the years, including some of the oldest ones from back in the day, 2008, that I recorded on VHS, games like Breakout and Video Pinball, some of the newer reviews like Jinks and Bermuda Triangle, and some of the newer Atari 2600 games like Juno First and the super cool Atarivox that talks to you. Let's kick this off with the review of my favorite Atari 2600 model, the Atari 2600 Junior.
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade because the Earth can't handle this much Atari. I'm Atari fanboy Mark, and come take a trip with me to gaze upon all the Atari goodness contained within. It's a marvelous day in outer space or whatever planet you live on to enjoy some Atari 2600 Junior. It's like the big Atari 2600 except it's smaller. It has an attractive stainless steel finish instead of the awesome wood grain. But is it as good? Let's find out. Starting now! We do not ask the question, should I own an Atari 2600? Instead, we ask, which Atari 2600 should I own? Because there's a whole bunch of models to choose from, including the classic wood-grained one, seen here. The Video Computer System, which is what most of us think of when we think Atari 2600, but there's a more futuristic option, the Atari 2600 Junior, which ditches the 1970s era styling in favor of the 1980s, I guess. 1990s. It still looks pretty current today. I like the styling on the 2600 Junior. This was my original Atari 2600 from way back in the day, and it remains the workhorse of the Classic Game Room Atari 2600 reviews. This thing continues to work perfectly today. The video quality is good, and typically I'll recommend the 2600 Junior over the older models because it's newer and I feel like there's less to break. They're typically less expensive, and my guess is that most of them weren't used as heavily as the original models from the 70s. The 2600 Junior moves the difficulty switches to the back of the unit with the controller ports, and this continues to work with all of the 2600 accessories, including the Sega Genesis gamepad. I'm going to start by hooking my Atari 2600 Junior up to a VCR, a Classic Game Room brand VCR. Hi-fi stereo, extra funky. And let me show you how I do this. Over the years, I've noticed that the quality and the length of your cable make a difference. Don't read too much into that. This is a super old school RCA cable, and this one works pretty well. I'm not sure. Maybe the age of the cable makes a difference. Like, it remembers Atari and loves it. So we'll plug it in there, and the other end goes into the VCR. Let me show you. I'm going to use one of these adapters, RCA to coax. This is a much better alternative than that old school RF adapter. I'm just going to plug the other end of the RCA cable into that. This breaks the signal into composite video and, well, mono audio over left and right channel. I have the Atari plugged in and I've just turned on the VCR. I'm going to go to channel 3. And bam, there we go, Sword Quest. Earthworld. Look at those beautiful colors and that detail. Atari 2600 Junior is where it's at. Today I'm going to be using the Atari 7800 gamepad. There's no shortage of Atari 2600 controllers out there to choose from, originals and aftermarket controllers. You can also use the excellent Sega Genesis gamepad for most games. Alright, let's quest for some swords, and I'm gonna name this guy Mr. Atari. Mr. Atari is lost. Here's my Atari 2600 inventory control screen. Pretty old school. And off we go. Notice the 2600 Junior looks great. Sounds good too. We're gonna go this way. Whoa! Oh crap, what are we doing here? Run! As you can see, the Atari 2600 Junior is tons of fun. It's great to collect for, and it's a nice alternative to the original old-school wood grain Atari. It's newer, it's probably a bit cheaper in good working order. If you're gonna buy one Atari 2600, it might be the one to get. Come on. It's like Frogger with Atari guy. Keep in mind, these are old, so don't overspend, but get the best Atari you can find for a reasonable price and then spend the rest of your money on Atari games. That way, the magic of Atari 2600 will live forever through you, provided you live forever, which you will if you play lots of Atari. It's science. It's such a sad version of Pac-Man. This game is so good! You need an Atari 2600 Junior just so you can play Pitfall 2. Alright, here's the problem reviewing the Atari 2600 Junior. I can spend all day sitting here playing Pitfall 2. But you know what? You should be enjoying it. Go pick up an Atari 2600 or a 2600 Junior or an Atari 7800 now! And a Vectrex, because you want one. Excuse me. For my final game today, I'm going to play a famous Atari 2600 game based on a movie. Not this one, I'm talking about Krull! It's Krull! For the Atari 2600, you never hear about Krull anymore, and I'm talking about the movie. The 1983 science fiction fantasy film upon which this game is based. Which I actually I've always liked. I enjoyed Krull, and I never really understood why the film just didn't catch on. It was supposed to be a way bigger movie than it was, at least in terms of success. It's a huge film. But it's full of relatively unknown actors, and some guy named James Horner did the score for it. Even Liam Neeson's in it before he was famous. Krull is kind of like... it's kind of weird in the same way that Excalibur is weird. Released in 1983, it would have landed at the end of the Star Wars craze, and this game would have been released directly into the video game crash of the early 80s. Bad timing all around for Krull, but good timing for you because it's cheap and Krull is rad. And it's actually not too bad. Let's take a look at Krull, which reminds me a bit of Gorf, because there's like 4 games rolled into one. Starting with the scene from the movie where Prince What's-His-Face is getting married to What's-Her-Name or something, and then the guards come down, and of course it always just reminds me of Flash Gordon, which is a vastly superior movie in every way. Maybe that's why Krull failed. Krull takes itself seriously, where Flash Gordon sure as hell does not. Anyway, then you move on to the spiderweb part of the game, which is super irritating. You jump over the webs and reach that door at the top, which then shows you the location of the Black Fortress off to the side of the screen, and you have to go over to that exact spot, and then you ride your horses over to the Disco Yar's Revenge Castle. where you then battle Red Cookie Monster with the Kill Star to save Princess Promiscuity. I don't actually remember any of their names, so I'm just making them up. Damn it, Cookie Monster stole the Kill Star again. This part of the game is tricky, and as far as I know, the Kill Star from Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon has to be based on the glaive from Krull. Alright, I just did a pretty piss poor job there, which then forces me back to the annoying spiderweb sequence, which isn't too hard to figure out after you've done it a couple dozen times. Just make sure you remember to look for the location of the Black Castle. Fortress. The Black Fortress. Make sure to hammer the button to pick up glaives laying on the ground and any extra lives. Then battle the monster once again, making sure to catch your glaive before it does. I'll give this game a lot of credit for being pretty ambitious and doing a lot of things fairly well on the Atari 2600. I like the sound effect that the Princess Frisbee makes. That's pretty cool. And Krull is a cool game. This must have been a nightmare to program on the Atari 2600 because there's a lot going on. There's multiple gameplay styles and lots of different characters on screen and environments. And normally when an Atari game got complicated way back in the day, it got bad. And Krull somehow avoids being a complete train wreck. I think the game would have been better if they would have just somehow reworked the stupid spiderweb sequence and replaced it with a clone of Frogger or something. That's the weak point of the game for me, but otherwise, it's totally worth playing because it's such an ambitious and interesting Atari 2600 game. But not as good as Flash Gordon on the Atari 2600, the game is also just a little bit better. Check this one out, you shouldn't have to pay too much, and while you're at it, rent or buy the movie, it's neat. Preferably on Laserdisc, because it's the right thing to do. Krull on the Atari 2600. Rock the Kill Star. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to a very special classic game room where I've solved one of the great mysteries of the universe. What lurks at the Bermuda Triangle? A high score on your Atari 2600. Take that, giant squid. That's what you get for interfering with my plundering of the valuables left beneath the surface of the Bermuda Triangle. For Atari 2600, released in 1982. What a great year. I think half of the Atari 2600 games were released in that year. Kinda freaking everyone out back then. They all play the same, but you have to look closely at Bermuda Triangle to see that it's more than just a combination of Defender and Sequest. It's a good combination of Defender and Sequest. This game surprised me. I really didn't think it was all that good at first until I started playing it more and got into it. Then I found that there's a lot to love about Bermuda Triangle. Here's what you do. You're piloting a yellow submarine once again. They've always got to be yellow for some reason. Robbing the ancients of their treasure left on the seafloor. But be careful not to try to pick up the bombs, which are the things that clearly don't look like treasure. They look like Super Bowl trophies. You don't want them. After your thieving, you bring your valuables up to the surface and deposit them in the brown ship. Not the orange one, which will kill you. The brown one. That gives you big points. You shoot the sea creatures for less points, and if they touch you, they'll stun your submarine, except for those things that look like they come straight out of Defender, they'll kill you. That's the game. That's the whole game, which plays exactly like this until you get to 10,000 points. Then, it all changes. Oh no, you've triggered the alarm system. The Bermuda Triangle underwater alien things are going to start shooting at you with lasers. And the game gets a lot harder and much better. But before I really get into it, let's take a look at the game cartridge, which I had to dissect to play. The innards of the Atari cartridge had been shifted out of alignment over 3 decades. So I had to crack open the shell and remove the delicious video game interior and place that directly into the Atari. Removing the middleman, which doesn't really change the game. After 10,000 points, if you're directly beneath one of the ships for too long, they'll zap you with a giant laser beam from space. So the trick at this point in the game is to start moving backwards and forwards and just make sure you're never sitting below that thing, while also dodging an increased number of enemies. See, that's what happens when you're not really paying attention. Drop off your treasure and get out of the way. It's so fast that you really don't have time to dodge it, you've just got to play in a way that it doesn't have time to target you. While dodging the blinky things that will explode your submarine. So, like I said, not as good as Defender, not as good as Sequest, but an interesting combination of the two. In retrospect, this was a fun era. There's lots of games like this where they took 2 or 3 other popular games from the period and just combined them. Bermuda Triangle is not bad, it's not great, but it's a good time if you'd like to challenge yourself and try to survive once the game really gets going. Doesn't cost much, and it's a worthy addition to your Atari 2600 collection. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Circus Atari on the Atari 2600, another amazing Atari game played with the paddle controllers. Circus Atari. Could you imagine anyone making a video game these days about clowns popping balloons at a circus? Like, the world is just too bitter and cynical now for a game like this. Well, take a trip back to the 1980s, or maybe even the late 70s. What year was this released? 1980, same year as The Empire Strikes Back, and Circus Atari, like Empire, is totally Lando. This game is the administrator of your Atari when played correctly with the paddle controllers. I love paddle controller games. And I hate clowns, so I'm happy to see them flattened on the floor when you miss. This is such a brilliant take on the classic Pong or Breakout formula, instead of just moving a paddle back and forth and bouncing balls into blocks. You're killing clowns with a teeter-totter. There's one less clown to worry about. Hate clowns. Circus Atari is legit. This game is way harder than it looks, actually. There's several game variants, but the real key here is that the Atari is replicating physics. You've got to make the one clown land on the opposite side of the teeter-totter to make the other clown fly up into the air. Which means that you want them to land just so, and that's not easy. There's an A and a B setting for your Atari, but I really didn't notice too much difference between them. The game is is challenging, but a lot of fun. Especially if you like Breakout, because it's just a nice clever twist on that classic gameplay formula. Hitting the button will make the clown switch which side of the teeter-totter he's on, so you can line up your shots. Sometimes you'll get lucky and they'll hang out up there in the balloons like Breakout or Arkanoid and just bounce around and score some big points. Other times they'll just come bouncing right down into your face and splatter all over the ground, which elicits great cheers and rejoice from the crowd. Does anybody like clowns? Anyone? The only good clown is a clown being tossed into the Sarlacc pit. This game is a lot of fun. It's also really, really cheap and easy to find online. Search through the ClassicGameRoom.com website because I hate clowns. But love paddle controller games on the Atari. I feel like nothing in the modern era can recreate the simple joy of paddle controller games. Especially when you combine that with beer. There's few things in life greater than drinking beer and playing Atari. It's just the perfect way to spend time. And Bell's doesn't make a bad beer. For a whopping 20 or 30 bucks, you can probably pick up paddle controllers, Warlords, Super Breakout, Demons to Diamonds in this game. That'll keep the party going for a while. Although I do need someone to tune up my paddle controllers. I have 3 sets of them, like none of them are perfect. Also, my Arcadia 2001 joystick just broke. I'm having a tough week with antique electronics. Thankfully, Circus Atari is here to cheer me up. I smile every time a clown dies. I know what you're thinking. Mark, you need a CRT television. You're right. I'll be bringing my 19 home soon. But I also need an 8-track player. This game could use some more music. Maybe some ABBA. Woo. Ah. I'm not drinking for the clown. I'm drinking for you. And for me. When the world seems especially crazy, that's the perfect time to play some Atari 2600 and drink a beer. Cheers. This is Breakout for the Atari 2600. And this is a kind of game that they don't make anymore, and that's a shame because this game is a lot of fun. This is a true arcade classic. Originally, this came out in the arcade in 1976 and made its way to the Atari 2600 shortly thereafter. And this game uses the paddle controllers where you move your shield at the bottom of the screen or your giant cursor or whatever you want to call it. You move that back and forth and you bounce the ball up into the shield, the row of the 6 layers of blocks there. And you can see how the game is played pretty easily here. It's actually pretty simple to look at, but when you play it, it's a lot of fun. In fact, it really sucks you in. This game is very addictive. This is actually one of my favorite Atari 2600 games because it looks so simple, yet it's so much fun. Your ball starts bouncing slowly at the beginning, and as you break your way through the layers and start hitting the orange and the red layers, then your ball starts moving a lot faster, and that makes it a lot harder. Now, Now, if you shoot all the way through your shield and it starts hitting the ceiling, your shield size shrinks, making it even harder to rebound the ball back. Now, typical Atari 2600 fashion, they give you numerous variations on the game. This is a 4-player game, by the way, up to 4 players, although I'm only showing you the single-player mode. There's a variation where you can move the direction of your ball shortly after you rebound it. There's a variation where you can actually catch your ball and hold on to it when it hits your shield. And then my favorite variation is, of course, the invisible mode. I always like the invisible mode on the Atari games, like Space Invaders. It gives an added element of challenge. This was a fairly common style for a game back in the day. This, of course, stemmed from the game Pong, which was regarded as at least one of the first video games, and gave us games like Breakout, Super Breakout, and one of my favorites, Arkanoid, where you didn't just have a shield, but you had a shield that could shoot things with lasers and stuff. It's a game we'll have to get to somehow on Classic Game Room HD. I'm not sure if that came out for any systems, though. But Breakout is a must-have. It's a good party game. It's a good game to play just hanging out for a couple minutes here and there. Seriously, it's cheap. You won't be disappointed. Pick up the paddle controllers. Pick up Breakout. This game is a classic example of why you need a physical Atari 2600 or 7800 on your coffee table with the paddle controllers to enjoy Atari. Because this is a great game. Emulation will not do this justice.
Vanished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Atarivox Plus, the voice synthesis module and memory card for your Atari 2600 for games that support it. Ever want to hear what your Atari has to say? Well, now you can with Atarivox. Juno First. Oh, I didn't know that. Just when I thought I've seen everything, along comes the Atarivox Vectrex Enhanced. Phonetic speech, preset, sound, 5-channel music synth, and memory for your Atari 2600. I want to hug whoever invented this. Some people might ask, why is this necessary in life? I would say, how can you live without it? You plug it into controller port 2, and for the few games that support it, you get voice synthesis, and you can save your games. Why wasn't this invented in the 70s? What took them so long? Now, I only have one game that works with it, Juno First, which I previously reviewed, one of the best games on Atari 2600. Juno First will now talk to you, and it saves your high scores. So after plugging this thing in, the sound is output through an 1/8-inch audio cable. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this, but it will not mix or combine the audio with your Atari 2600 automatically. You have to find a way to do that. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You'll hear the sound mixed in this video review because this is a mono recording of stereo. I got second place. How is that failure? Why is this thing always so negative? The Atarivox is actually going through the left speaker, and the Atari 2600 is going through the right one. That's the easiest way to do this if you're running a stereo setup with your Atari 2600. You could also just run the Atarivox independently through a stereo and the Atari through a television, so you're not getting that weird right and left effect, or you could use headphones. If you're clever and or have access to a Radio Shack, you can build or buy something that'll just mix it. Saving games is far less complicated because it just saves your games. Using magic. But only games that'll support it. Sadly, this does not work with Yar's Revenge, Missile Command, or so many other excellent Atari games that should have had this in mind 30 years ago. It is they who failed. Now I can save my score. No, I win. Stupid Atarivox. I win.
Don't listen to it.
Atarivox.
So, where do you get one of these things? Check the internet, AtariAge.com. Although at the time of this recording, they're sold out.
Juno First. Wait one.
And they have a list of a bunch of other games that work with it.
Cyberspace.
Like Elevators, A Miss Go Fish, and Stratogems Deluxe. Sadly, it doesn't work with Super Breakout, but I love hearing all of the dialogue in Juno First and saving my games. So a huge thanks to Andrew
Who is you, man?
from St. Leonard, Maryland, for sending this to the show. I look forward to playing some of those other games with it.
Useless metal.
There's some dip switch settings. This will work on Atari 7800 and the Vectrex. I'm unable to test this on the Vectrex at this time. It requires an extension cable, and I don't think I have any games that use it. But the fact that it supports it is worthy of a round of applause. Yay! It is unacceptable that this does not work with Truxton, though. Epic failure.
You're an undone.
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Juno First on the Atari 2600. I love this game, but I have an issue with the title, Juno First. That implies that Truxton comes second, and that's unacceptable. Juno First is first in awesome Atari 2600 chiptune music. This game sounds impressive. Most impressive. So here's what you do. You start out by rocking out to the menu music, which sadly doesn't play during the game, but it's really impressive because it starts out and you think it'll just repeat, right? Well, it doesn't. It just keeps going and going and going and adding different layers, and it's really good. I have no idea how they got those sounds out of the Atari 2600. And just when it seems like the game couldn't possibly top the intro music, it does. Juno First is easily one of the best Atari 2600 releases ever created, based on Konami and Gottlieb's 1983 arcade game. This is actually a 2010 release published by AtariAge. While it's a vertical scrolling spaceship shooter, it plays a lot like Defender, and sounds quite similar too. The game plays very smoothly, as you can see, and the controls are excellent. You can move forwards and backwards, but try not to back into enemies. That's actually pretty easy to do. And the game infinitely loops like Defender. You can see the enemies in the distance, and you have to destroy all of them to clear off each wave before you run out of fuel. Obviously, the enemies are shooting at you, and as you keep playing, you'll encounter more challenging enemies with new weapons like homing missiles. And during each wave, you'll encounter what appears to be a little planet or sphere, and if you shoot that, there's a little guy or astronaut or something in the middle of it. If you catch that dude, you then go into hyperspace and blow up enemies when they're not shooting at you. And maybe get some bonus points, I'm not entirely sure. I always left hyperspace with more points than when I entered it, so it does something good for you. Juno First is not a game that you hear very much about, and that's a shame because it's really good. It was a 1983 arcade machine, and unbeknownst to me, until I received this game and then happened to catch it out of the corner of my eye while I was playing Asteroids, It's on my multicade, so I had it all along. Who knew? Here's what the arcade version would have looked like. I've never actually seen a Juno First arcade machine, but it plays really well on my 60-in-1 multicade. And it plays really well and sounds even better on Atari 2600. Let's hear that music again. I'll just lay that over the gameplay for all of you to enjoy. I highly recommend this game, by the way. Yes, they're still releasing Atari 2600 games over at AtariAge.com. Which is good, proving that the Atari 2600 still has a lot of life left in it. In fact, they also have a gadget so you can save your high scores for this game. This one was sent to the show along with Beam Rider on the Atari 2600 by Andrew from Minford, Ohio. So a big thanks to Andrew for introducing me to Juno First, a game I'm enjoying on the 2600 and in the arcades, or well, at least in my arcade. I haven't seen it in anyone else's, but if I do, I'm playing it there too. Can't get enough of that music and Juno First gameplay. This is simply an amazing Atari 2600 release. Highly recommended. Thank you, Andrew, once again. Juno comes second to Truxton, but the title of the game is still Juno First. Truxton second. Truxton never comes second. Is there ever a point when you just think to yourself, insert beer, output Atari? Those of us who love Atari 2600 know that Activision was king of Atari and made some of the best games, while Jinks from 1982 isn't one that you ever hear about. Oh, stupid balloon! It's a lot of fun and provides great replay value and challenge. Let's take a look. .98 and I crashed into a tree. It's not very often that I find myself enjoying a flight game that doesn't involve blowing things up, but here it is. Jinks is like a fancy, stylish version of Slalom with an airplane, where you make your way through one of several courses, flying past the orange pylons on the right and the white ones on the left. Try to clear each stage as quickly as you can while dodging obstacles. It's just that simple, and the simplicity makes it really fun. Like most of the Activision games from back in the day, it looks great, it's well made, and plays like a boss. Welcome to a super special classic game room, because my friend Scott from Aberdeen, Scotland sent this beer to the show from Brewdog. It's a punk IPA, and I'm going to open this in the presence of a Vectrex because it's Friday, and I'm about to review some Atari games. This is how I do it in space. And I'll be reviewing this delicious beer, hopefully delicious beer. I've heard great things about it, so I have not actually had one yet. This is my first Brewdog beer, all the way from Scotland. I think I can say with certainty that beer and flight go really well together, at least on the Atari. Alright, 3798, it's time to beat. Let's do it! Get some! It is disappointing you can't shoot anything in this game. I mean, I think we can all agree that machine guns make everything better. Especially airplanes. That's right, imagine River Raid without the explosions. It's kind of like that, but not at all. It's Slalom. There's several levels. The first one gives you 25 gates, then it goes to 50, 75, and 99. The difficulty switches seem to throw more obstacles in your way that you can't shoot down or blow up.
3656.
You think they could have at least given you lasers in this game? And apparently, according to the manual that I found online, if you can make it through level 1 really fast, Activision will even send you a patch for your denim jacket. I wonder if that offer is still valid. The controls in Sky Jinks are very simple. The button accelerates, letting go of the button decelerates, and you move left and right to dodge things. Make sure to keep a notepad and pencil or crayons handy to write down your best time, or just take a picture off the screen and send it to Activision, who then owes you a patch.
3656 is the time to beat. Get some! There it is. Check it out. Not nearly as thick looking as a lot of the American IPAs. I'm intrigued. 99.
That beer is tasty. It's like a cross between an American West Coast IPA and a British IPA. It's got a unique flavor, actually.
3656 is the time to beat, but I'm not going to use the Sega Genesis controller for this. Oh no. Watch this.
Are you ready for the Tron controller?
Come on, Tron! I fight for the users! Whoops. 3656! I fight for the users! Oh, come on. 3656 is the time to beat. I fight for the users! I'm Tron! Whoops. I so want this to be the superior joystick, but it isn't. Come on. Suction cups, you fail me! Why is there a tree there? And why can I not burn down the tree? Somebody should put flamethrowers on this thing. Haven't you played Fire Shark? Ah.
At first, I didn't think I was going to enjoy this that much, what without the violence and all, but the more I played Sky Jinx, the more I just fell in love with this game. It's highly addictive, it's simple, but it plays so incredibly well on the Atari 2600. You must have this game in your collection, and it's dirt cheap. Sky Jinx. No relation to Skylynx from the Transformers.
Woo! Yeah, 3581. That's the time to beat. There's my plane burning by that tree. This comes as a shock to me, but as it turns out, coffee is even better for flying games. Who knew? The difference between a Monday and Friday recording session. The beauty is when you edit them together. Makes me seem like a raging drunk on Monday morning.
I don't remember when I bought this game. I've had it for years, and I'm glad to have finally played it.
Sky Jinx! Nothing says punk IPA like drinking a punk IPA in the presence of an Atari 2600 and Tron controller. Thank you again, Scott from Aberdeen, Scotland. And Eric from Pasadena sent the Tron controller, so thank you also, Eric. They go very well together, while prominently perched on top of a VCR. That's just how it is here. Cheers to all of you. I drink for the users.
Strategy-wise, you really want to fly as fast and recklessly as possible. Just try not to crash into things. If you do, you can continue flying. Activision made their planes tough. So once again, thanks to everyone for watching, and definitely pick this game up for your Atari.
Oh, come on, man. I have just inadvertently unlocked the Matrix. This is reality right here, as seen through the Atari 2600. See the girl in the red dress? Yeah, right there. All right, let's mix it up. Let's go with level 3 here. This is the one with 75 gates. Oh. It's gonna get ugly. Yep. 75 gates. Level 3. I feel like I should be able to shoot that balloon down. It's only fair, it keeps getting in my way. Ah! You're just adding insult to injury. Gosh. I'm gonna bomb. How do I bomb things? Sky Jinks on Atari 2600. I forgot I had this game. Recently discovered it while working on my shelves, and now it's time to play some Atari. Whoa!
Oh man, that was weird. I never thought the Atari could take you to the R-Zone, but I felt it wrong.
Right. You know, there's a time and a place for PBR. It's a good summertime porch beer. Also, somebody, I'm not pointing any fingers, but somebody may have consumed the 6-pack of IPA that was in there. Who could do such a thing? Detail on that space plane. Like, you just don't get that kind of quality on the NES. And you can wiggle it back and forth. Whee! That explosion looks pretty cool through the beer glass. Let's take a look at that again. It's not shameless promotion, it's art. Alright, is everyone ready for some Zaxxon in 4 dimensions? 4 dimensions of Zaxxon on the Atari 2600. Yes, this game was the first game that I reviewed on the Classic Game Room reboot in 2008, after the show was on hiatus there for about 7 or 8 years. It's not a very good version of Zaxxon. But it's kind of interesting. It's historically significant, right? Because it's the first game that appeared on Classic Game Room HD, where the HD stood for heavy duty. Seriously? That wasn't very heavy duty. High definition didn't even... How do you hate me? Come on. I'm trying to talk here. There we go. High definition didn't really exist yet back then on the internets. Man, I'm doing a bang-up job. I think my 2008 review is probably better than this. This game is Zaxxon
for the Atari 2600. And you fly a spaceship through space and shoot things with lasers. Yeah, I didn't really have the flow for my commentary going yet. I'm sure you're all gonna go and watch the Zaxxon review, right? This reminds me of. I'm just full of stories today. It was like 19. My God, is that the Atari beeping or my dehumidifier? I'm here to eradicate your species, whatever species you are. I demand that Sega go back in time. Whoa, those things are bad. I demand that Sega go back to 1982 or whatever and remake this game. You can do a better job. Whoa. It's thrilling. Not really. I mean, it kind of has some things in common with Zaxxon, the arcade game. What? The type font is the same on the cartridge. Have you guys all seen that Zaxxon hat, by the way? I want one of these in the worst way. Like, I'm always hunting on eBay to find one that's not, like, totally gross. What hit me? There was, like, a promotional hat, like a Zaxxon trucker cap. I must find one. I saw somebody wearing that at Kennywood, which, by the way, is the most Kennywood thing ever. Well, it would have been if he had a mullet and was drinking Icy Light, but he probably was when I wasn't looking. Zaxxon fights for the freedom of the future in space. Really gotta put lyrics onto some songs one of these days. Alright, what is this thing? The yellow ones confuse me. I genuinely don't know what they are. Like, I get that the green things there are spaceships, and that's clearly a radar dish, which has now been destroyed by my laser fire, and my accuracy, and my, years of playing Atari skills. I lost my train of thought. Like, I can't top the 2008 review. I don't know what to say. You know, I'm excited about the upcoming Atari 2600 Plus or whatever. The super HDMI Atari. But, you know, one of the things that makes, like, original hardware so much fun is, like, the static on the screen and stuff like that. Like, you just don't get that with the HDMI. Everything's, like, perfect. You know? I kind of like just the static and the imperfection of everything. Now that being said, convenience will be nice. This is not really Zaxxon. I don't know what this is. It's not as good as Zaxxon. Let's be honest. It's not the worst game on the Atari, but it's, you know, maybe not one that I would recommend. You know what? You're better off playing River Raid. To be honest, River Raid was very good. I haven't played that game in a while either. Man, I gotta start busting out all my. Come on! See, you probably didn't know that. That's why it's Pabst Blue Ribbon, because they won a blue ribbon at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. Oh, it's the robot! You've probably never seen Zaxxon in such clarity and high definition. Filming in 4K makes Zaxxon. You know, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Look at that radar dish! Oh. No! I shot you, stupid radar dish. This game is making me angry! I'm gonna take out my anger on these dumb robots. And that flying... It's like a dog. I don't know what that thing is. I question this game's collision detection over and over and over and over and get over again. There we go. Okay. Whew. Flying in space, fighting for peace with lasers, because peace is boring and explosions make it better. Whoa, look at the big points. Oh man. Clearly you can see there's like 3 dimensions of me avoiding that thing. Alright, at this point I'm just gonna run away from you. I don't trust that. Yeah.
Gotta blow up the gas tanks, or else, well, you run out of gas. That actually doesn't make any sense if you think about it. Shouldn't you have to slow down and refuel your plane instead of blowing up the gas tanks? I guess that would have been a not fun Atari game. The robot! Now we are going to fly through another level on the Atari 2600. Oh, here we go. Force field. Yeah. No! Yes, no! No! Yes! Ah, the pilot's turned to jelly. And flew into that thing. Grr, stupid robot, die! Yes! Dumbass robot. I have won! The universe is safe! People are free! Wait, no. Oh, there's another level. Huh. I was gonna say that was a short game. Alright. Gotta refuel by blowing up the gas tanks. Oh, damn it! That's number 3 on my top 10 things that I'm angry at. But how's that go? Top 10... I'm not angry enough to do this. I need to get more angry. Top 10 angry... Top 10 things about Zaxxon that make me angry. That! Definitely. Yes, the early days of Classic Game Room were fun. Gather around the fireplace, kids, for more stories and heartwarming adventures from Classic Game Room's past. In 2008, before a certain social media monopoly pile of garbage turned into some sort of weird hybrid combination of Fox News and ESPN, they had like this page where they would show you the top videos or top channels or whatever. And like the top channels were like Sesame Street and Top Gear, and Classic Game Room was up there for a while. I think I'm pretty sure I have a picture of this somewhere, but there were awards you could get. It was so rudimentary. In the early days, we got some big hits, like dozens of hits, which is pretty much what the videos get now, except now I don't care. Classic Game Room is the only video game review show in the world, funded by beer glasses. Speaking of which, beer would be good now. I mean, it might increase my Zaxxon Atari 26, can't even speak. It might increase my speaking. My good speaking. It might increase my Zaxxon skills. Certainly they can't get any worse. You know what this game's making me want to do in addition to grabbing a beer? Is play like the arcade Zaxxon, which is really cool. I have it on my multicade, but like you need the Zaxxon cabinet. It's such a cool cabinet, and the joystick's really good. One of the arcades near me has a Zaxxon. It's pretty awesome. I would play it more, but they also have Robotron and Godzilla Pinball, so I'm immediately distracted. But next time I'm there, I'll play Zaxxon, and I'll shoot a video, and I'll put it on the internet, and I'll do that. Top 10 things that make me angry about Zaxxon. That there's only 2 X's in the title. There could have been 3 X's. Zaxxon, which would have been the triple X version of Zaxxon. Kind of angry that we don't have that, right? Now that would be cool. Number 9. It's not very good. That makes me angry. Because I spent probably no money at all when I got this game. I don't even know when I got this game. Whew. Stupid robot. This is what you get for moving back and forth in front of me. Death by lasers. Dun, dun, dun. Where was I? Number 9. It's not like the arcade Zaxxon. Number 8. What makes me angry? Man, I really need to get angrier. God. Like, just think how many billions of hits this video would get if I was actually genuinely angry about anything, but I'm not. I guess I am disappointed I don't have a beer, though. I mean, I do. I just have to get up off my chair and get one. That makes me very angry. It's inconvenient. Inconvenience makes me so angry. How dare I have to fight the forces of gravity to move somewhere and get a beer? I have to open a door. Oh, God. I forgot about the door. Man, that's going to require some physical exertions. Why did I pick Zaxxon as the first game on the Classic Game Room HD in 2008? I have no idea. Not a clue. It's probably like just the first thing I reached for. I was like, I'm going to post video game reviews again. This will never work. 50 billion views later. And, well, it kind of worked. It worked for a while, and then it didn't work. And then it worked again, and then it didn't work. And then it's working again. It's kind of funny how that works. I'm going to have to, like, actually grab the handle, which requires some motor skills, because I have to, like, locate the handle, you know, which is very hard, especially after having no beers, to grab the handle and then pull. It's like, kind of like a magnetic thing on the, you know, it's like, there's some resistance. Then I have to, like bend over a little bit. And I have to reach my hand in the refrigerator. And it's gonna be cold. Oh, it's gonna be so cold in the refrigerator. I don't even have gloves. How do people do this? Heavy sigh. You know, I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna go through all of his pain and discomfort and inconvenience for you. And by you, I mean me. Because I need a beer. It is, after all, still Truxton o'clock. Can you see that? Oh, it's 4:36. It's after 5 somewhere. Cheers from space! It's good, crisp, tasty, super cheap. All right, where was I? I was talking about the history of Classic Game Room. I think at one point the show or the channel had almost as many hits as Top Gear. I hope I have a picture of that somewhere. That was awesome. And I think what happened is I suspect that some of these larger companies, like whoever was making Sesame Street or whatever, and Top Gear, and companies that you've actually heard of, I think they might have been annoyed that some no-name schmucks like me had almost as many views as they did. And then quickly, those counters went away. And now there's probably like YouTube awards or whatever. Oh, I said the name. Oh, damn it. It's like, what's the bad guy from Harry Potter? I want to say Golgamort, but that's not it. Is it Gilgamesh? Voltron. Damn it, what's that guy's name? Gilgamort. Thou shalt not say the name.
Banished from Earth, Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I bring you the review of one of the most famous video games in history, famous for being bad. It's E.T. on the Atari 2600, but is it as awful as everyone says it is? Let's find out. It's like returning to the scene of a crime. It's E.T. Extra Terrestrial for the Atari 2600, which has become famous on the internet over the past decade or so. It's easy to jump up and down and scream and shout about how terrible this game is when you don't understand it. It's slightly more challenging to jump up and down and scream about how terrible this game is after you've tried to understand it. Popular opinion out there will lead you to believe this game is awful and created the video game crash of 1982-83, and I'm not going to try to change that opinion. It's not a good game, but let me give you a bit of backstory. Before I start tearing it to pieces, if you heard my recent podcast on CGR 2085, you already know this, but I despise the movie E.T. I've always hated it ever since I was a kid. Because my dad took me to see E.T., he's running around in the woods and there's no stormtroopers shooting at him. E.T. wasn't Star Wars, therefore E.T. sucked. And I've tried to watch it a half dozen times or so since then over the years. I've never been able to find anything about that movie that I've liked. And I typically like Steven Spielberg's work. Jaws and Indiana Jones are two of my favorite movies, but I just can't get into E.T. I've never liked the plot, the characters, or the music. And unlike a lot of people who have dragged this game through the digital mud for laughs, I remember it when it was new. And it wasn't any better back then. But what I think a lot of people want to hear from me is it the worst Atari game ever made? No. No, there's far worse Atari 2600 games. 1982 was not a very good year for Atari games, and while E.T. shoulders most of the blame on his disfigured fat alien head, E.T. is actually a good example of competent programming on the Atari 2600 because it does what it's supposed to do. The game actually works. It's just not fun. It's a totally different world that we live in now, but in 1982-83 there were a lot of video game startups, and this was the dawn of the video game era. People were still learning how to make games. In 1982, the Atari 2600 was the dominant popular home game system, and Atari was like the Google of 1982. A lot of you old-timers already know this, but for the younger guys and gals listening, you have to take your mind out of the future when there's internet reviews, freemium games, and $5 games that are good. This was back in the days when games cost like 30 or 40 bucks in 1982, which was a lot of money, and turned out to be terrible games, which is why so many of the early Atari games from this period have incredible box and cartridge art, which were used to sell terrible games on the inside, or at least mediocre games. In the case of E.T., it was sold on the name and success of this big popular Steven Spielberg film. So E.T. was bought by a lot of people who would not have bought video games otherwise. Or maybe a better way to describe that is, E.T. was bought by a lot of people who would have bought only 4 or 5 games for the holiday season in 1982. So you bought Pac-Man, maybe Frogger or Pitfall. I'm just throwing out names here, but I remember this because my friend had this game and he had like a stack of popular games and E.T. was in the mix. And we absolutely hated it because we just kept falling into pits. That's what you do in this game. You fall into pits in order to find pieces of E.T.'s phone, his future space alien cell phone, call home, get picked up by your alien friends, leave, and then you get a score. This game just wasn't fun, and it's not fun today, but you've got to give it credit for at least working. Here's what you do. You walk around as E.T. through these couple levels. I think there's 4 different environments, in addition to a forest screen and like government administrative facility and Elliot's house screen. There's zones in each screen that are indicated by a symbol at the top of the screen, like a question mark, that when you push your Atari controller button, will do something like reveal the location of a cell phone piece in a pit. And then you fall into the pit, hold down the button to extend E.T.'s deformed neck, levitate out of the pit, and then quickly move to the bottom left or right and run around, all the while avoiding the G-men who are trying to take the pieces of E.T.'s phone from him, which will happen if they touch E.T. And as you just saw, if you have the government monument symbol up there, you can push the button and send the government employees back to their administrative facilities. And that gives you a bit of time. So basically, you try to collect the 3 phone pieces, find the alien calling screen or symbol, call home, and then go back to the forest where you find the landing symbol and get picked up before time runs out. It's pretty tough, actually, when you're playing levels 1 or 2. Level 3 allows you to enjoy the game without the government employees. It's not fun because E.T., when played correctly, just increases my anxiety level because there's nothing enjoyable about falling into pits. It's not a fun game. I can't recommend it. If you're collecting for the Atari, odds are you have 1 or 2 copies of E.T. because people will just send you this game to get rid of it. But E.T. does not deserve to be called the worst Atari 2600 game or the worst video game ever made. E.T. is not to blame for the market crash of 1982-83. That really can be directed at Atari for allowing all kinds of garbage to be brought onto the Atari 2600, and that in turn caused Nintendo, many years later, to restrict games on the NES in order to have better games. So, maybe we should all thank E.T., because arguably video games got better in the future. Things had to change, and I think a lesson was learned back in the day, and someone has to fall on the sword, so it may as well be that short, fat, stupid, unlikable alien from that awful, overrated movie without stormtroopers, but don't blame the programming, because it actually works. It's just not fun. So if you're listening to this in 1982, if your radio's picking up some future broadcasts, don't buy E.T. In fact, don't buy any Atari games this year. Wait till 1984, they'll be way cheaper. Do buy a Vectrex. Trust me. You'll thank me in the future. I mean, who wouldn't rather play Mindstorm than this crap?
Welcome back to Classic Game Room, coming to you from the Intergalactic Space Arcade. Is it a bike or is it a rocket-propelled air jet ski thing? Maybe it's both in Megaforce for the Atari 2600. Alright, what we've got here is a 1982 video game from 20th Century Fox for the Atari 2600 based on the movie with the same name, Megaforce. A movie I haven't seen for well over 20 years. I don't even know if I ever saw the whole thing. It's supposed to be terrible, and it looks really cheesy, so I probably would like it. I like those kinds of movies. I should revisit Megaforce. Oh, freedom! Especially after playing this game, because Megaforce on the Atari is far more interesting and fun than its tie-in with a failed 1982 movie may lead you to believe. So, here's what you're doing. You're protecting the kingdom on the left, which is, I believe, called Sardoon, a friendly kingdom. You make your way to the right, fighting enemy forces, and destroy the enemy kingdom, which looks exactly the same, except it's darker. And you really don't want to look too deeply into this game. Someone could have a field day picking this apart for political reasons.
Yeah! It has very pleasing explosion sound.
It's just good, stupid fun. It's Megaforce. You're driving a dirt bike that transforms into an airborne jet ski, which is called the Moto Fighter.
Now it's a bike. Now it's a super jet ski. Now it's a bike. Now it's a super jet ski. Now it's a bike. Now it's a super jet ski. Oh, that was my own kingdom, I'm sorry.
Now here's the thing, during each round you can only score points as long as your kingdom is still standing, so if you blow up your own kingdom you don't get any points. Also, they're very angry at you. You make your way to the enemy kingdom, blowing up UFOs, surface-to-air missiles, and palm trees, most of which score points. I don't think the palm trees score points, but they should be blown up anyway, because they're palm trees. Now there's a lot of interlacing and blinking in this game, which makes it really hard to record, but it actually looks pretty good in person on a nice CRT or LCD screen. Now, like River Raid, you have to blow up those fuel canisters in order to somehow get fuel into your Moto Fighter. I'm not sure how that actually works, but maybe it's magic.
Woo! Destruction. This game has great explosion sounds. Also, look at the beautiful desert in the background.
It's a tough game because everything is moving really quickly, including your Moto Fighter.
If you let the UFOs past you, they're going to destroy your kingdom, so you want to blow them up while also keeping an eye on these surface-to-air missiles. And those damn palm trees. You see, the problem is, if they blow up your kingdom, you don't get points anymore, so you've got to blow up their kingdom, so they're just blown up. And they don't get points anymore, presumably because they've been blown up. This game teaches friendship. Superbike, engaged! I want a Moto Fighter. I wonder if you can buy one of those things, especially with missiles. Seems really handy. Well, it's relatively simple, and you'll be doing the same thing over and over again, dodging those UFOs, blowing up the surface-to-air missiles before they get you, and hitting extraneous palm trees. Megaforce is surprisingly playable and catchy. It's a cool game on the Atari 2600, not one you hear about very often. If you like games like River Raid, Defender, Choplifter, and Excite Bike, this kind of combines all of them into one. Megaforce. I have a jet ski. What do you have? Time to save the Magic Kingdom. Yeah. Nobody likes you. You suck. Let's just reset that. The only thing that I like as much as video games and watching movies is playing pinball. And Classic Game Room HD would review all kinds of pinball machines if they weren't so large and cumbersome and expensive. I love pinball. Pinball machines are just like the greatest things ever. And it's a shame that pinball and arcades are dying out because, like, who doesn't love pinball? Well, back from the day when pinball machines were quite common at the local arcades in the shopping mall, the Atari 2600 tried to bring out its own version of pinball, with video pinball. Actually, there were a couple pinball games on the Atari. This one is quite interesting. Somewhat bizarre. They decided to put the pinball table into a horizontal layout, which makes very little use of your flippers because the ball is usually going side to side and not up and down like on a normal pinball machine. The copyright on this game cartridge is 1981. I'm not sure if this was a reprint or not, but this is a pretty old school game, and it's impressive in some respects that they were even able to get some of the physics right on the bouncing ball. But as you can see, this is a pretty far cry from real pinball machines. My favorite pinball games are Black Hole, which I used to play in the arcade when my dad took me to the arcade back in the day. So you'd play on the top level, and then your ball would drop into the black hole, and you'd play on this lower level, which was really cool. Also, Bride of Pinbot. Has anyone ever played Bride of Pinbot? I played that game at, it was Martha's Vineyard or something, years ago. The Terminator 2 pinball machine's good. Guns N' Roses. I was really good at the Guns N' Roses machine. Tales from the Crypt. Star Wars pinball, of course. Like, you could take just about anything and make it into a great pinball game. But it's pretty difficult to make a pinball game great on a video game system. I'm generally very saddened by the demise of pinball. And I'd like to bring it back. So maybe if each and every one of us adopts a pinball machine and puts it in our basement, pinball will survive forever. But in the meantime, we do have video pinball in the Atari 2600. If we all join together and send millions of emails to Williams and the other companies that used to make pinball machines, we can we can start a revolution and we can get new pinball games made out of like Voltron. Wouldn't a Voltron pinball machine just hit the spot? Or a Transformers pinball machine where you could hit all the little targets that were Constructicons and then they would all form Devastator?
Laser gates, gates of lasers!
When you think of words that are used to make up great video game titles, especially on the Atari 2600, we think of words like space and dungeon, cavern, ninja. How about laser? As in laser gates for the Atari 2600 from Imagic, released in 1983. As the title suggests, this game has gates made of lasers, and you fly through them. It's awesome. This is a cool Atari 2600 game. I looked up the instructions online, and apparently you're flying through a computer brain or something. There's like 4 fail-safe detonators you have to blow up, and, well, it's pretty tricky, and a lot of fun. Sadly, the screen area is not that big, but it plays really well. Good controls, especially when using the Sega Genesis controller, which is what I'm playing Laser Gates with. I think it looks a lot like Vanguard. Not a bad thing. You'll want to keep an eye on your energy, shields, and the D-time, which probably stands for detonation time or something, but when you're playing with a giant disco ball right behind you that reflects in the middle of the screen, I think it stands for disco time. We must defeat the cryo brain before the laser gates stop disco time. It's an important mission. And watch out for those homing missiles, they're deadly. The laser gates and the shooty walls aren't too hard to avoid once you get into it. It's the homing missiles and the other enemies that do a lot of damage. Unless you're an idiot and fly into a shooty wall, which I just did. You can occasionally pick up an energy pod floating around, but the only way to replenish your shields is by scoring 10,000 points, then 20 and 30 and so on. You'll want your shields, they're kind of important. The enemy attacks will speed up as you pass each of the detonator things. And watch out for the ones that are booby-trapped. Yeah, they suck. Nobody likes you! If you hit the booby-trap detonator a couple times, it'll blow your own ship up, and then it's game over. Man, game over. Ow. Oh, come on. Once I got the hang of flying the ship, the laser gates really weren't that much of a problem. It's the homing missiles. Every time I destroy a homing missile, it's like a small victory. Then the gameplay footage seems to line up perfectly with me crashing into something. But the laser gates themselves do comparatively little damage even though they're made from lasers. It's the homing missiles and the other enemies that you've got to watch out for. If you fly all the way to the right of the screen, you can speed it up, but you know, that's really just not a good idea. It really speeds up once you pass the third one, but remember, you're fighting for disco time. Stay alive. And I've got a Laser Gates-sized classic game room shout out and thank you to send to Gary once again from Ridgewood, New Jersey. Thank you for sending Laser Gates to the show, Gary. This game is super cool. I highly recommend it. It doesn't cost all that much out there, and you must have it for your Atari 2600 collection. Laser gates. Gates of lasers.